The Iraqi major checks his watch in the cab of the MAZ-543 transporter. 0247 hours, January 23, 1991. 16 days into Desert Storm, and his SCUD launcher crew has survived every shift. The mathematics are simple in his mind. American satellites pass overhead on predictable orbits, 90-minute windows where the sky watches. His convoy left the hardened shelter in Al-Qam exactly 12 minutes after the last KH-11 reconnaissance bird crossed the horizon. The desert between western Iraq and the Jordanian border stretches black and empty under a moonless sky. Terrain the major knows like the creases in his uniform. No aircraft noise. No tracer fire stitching the darkness. Just the diesel rumble of 8-wheeled transporters carrying R-17 Elbrus missiles toward pre-surveyed launch coordinates 60 kilometers from Israel. The major lights a cigarette. Thermal imaging can't penetrate 60 kilometers of atmosphere, he reassures his driver. Coalition jets hunt in daylight, saving fuel and pilot fatigue for targets they can actually see. The SCUD-B weighs 11 tons, carries a 1-ton warhead, and takes 45 minutes to erect, fuel, and fire. His crew has rehearsed the choreography until muscle memory replaced thought. Jack the launcher vertical. Connect fuel lines. Input coordinates. Retreat 100 meters. Press the firing button. Then collapse everything and drive. The launcher becomes a truck again. Invisible. The major's crew has executed 7 launches. 7 successful escapes. The odds favor experience. Behind him, 3 more MAZ-543s carry their lethal cargo in convoy formation. Radio silence protocol means hand signals only. The phosphorescence on the major's watch dial glows green. 38 minutes until the next American satellite window opens. Plenty of time. The predetermined firing position lies just ahead, a wadi chosen because overhead imagery shows nothing but geological depression and wind-scoured rock. Israel sleeps 70 kilometers west. Tel Aviv's lights would be visible from here if not for the Earth's curve, the major thinks. Soon they'll feel what we send them. The convoy slows. Drivers downshift. The major's radio operator taps the predetermined spot on the map with his fingernail. This wadi, this exact grid coordinate. Crews dismount. Hydraulic systems whine as launchers tilt skyward, the missiles rising like accusing fingers. Fueling begins. The diesel and oxidizer smell fills the major's nostrils, familiar as his wife's perfume. Someone laughs, nervous energy breaking tension. 45 minutes of vulnerability, but vulnerability the Americans can't exploit. Not here, not in this window. The major watches pressure gauges climb. The gyroscope spools up inside the missile's guidance section. Coordinates lock. His men work with the efficiency of assembly line technicians, each task performed a dozen times before. The launcher's hydraulic stabilizers hiss, locking the firing platform level despite the uneven ground. They had 90 minutes before the Americans would even know they existed. The major's fuel technician crouches beside the MAZ-543's tank connection, wrench in hand, torquing the final coupling. The oxidizer line pressurizes with a metallic groan. 40 seconds until fueling completes. The missile stands erect against stars so thick they cast shadows in this lightless desert. The technician wipes sweat from his eyebrows despite the January cold. Adrenaline and concentration radiating heat through his body. His skull explodes. The supersonic crack arrives 3 seconds later, a sound like lightning striking steel, the atmosphere itself ripping. The technician's body collapses against the fuel truck as the major spins, cigarette falling from lips frozen in confusion. Where is the aircraft? Where are the bombs? His radio operator clutches his headset, screaming into frequencies that should be empty. Another crack splits the night. The windshield of the second MAZ-543 disintegrates inward. The driver slumps forward onto the horn, which begins its monotone wail into darkness. The major's brain hunts for explanations. Artillery? Impossible. No muzzle flash on any horizon. Missiles? He would have heard the motor burn. The fuel technician's body lies crumpled in a position that suggests his torso arrived at the ground before his legs understood the order. Blood spreads in the sand, black under starlight. Third crack. The hydraulic manifold on Launcher 1 ruptures, spraying pressurized fluid across the missile's fuselage. The major watches the geyser catch starlight, a fountain of mechanical failure erupting from equipment that was functioning 5 seconds ago. His men scatter toward the wadis. Smart soldiers know to disperse when death arrives from unknown vectors. The radio operator yanks his headset off, drops beside the major, breathing in panicked gulps. "What's shooting?" the operator gasps. The major has no answer. His ears ring from the supersonic cracks, but his eyes see nothing. No contrails, no targeting lasers painting the launchers, no AC-130 gunships circling overhead. Those make noise like chainsaws chewing metal. This is surgical silence interrupted by impacts. Another crack. Launcher 3's tire explodes. The MA's 543 lurching sideways as the wheel rim bites sand. The mathematics have failed. The major's 90-minute window is meaningless against an enemy that doesn't need satellites or aircraft or anything visible. He runs. Training evaporates. Discipline becomes survival instinct. His boots churn sand as another crack stitches the air where his head occupied 3 strides earlier. The fuel truck for Launcher 2 detonates. Not the Hollywood fireball he expects, but a dense, expanding pressure wave that slams him forward onto his chest. Heat rolls over his back. He tastes copper and diesel fumes. His ears lose all sound except a high whine, the frequency of biological damage. Crawling now. The major claws toward the wadi edge, every meter an eternity. Behind him, the remaining fuel trucks burn, flames climbing into sky that will betray their position to every coalition aircraft within 200 kilometers. The mission is ash. The missiles are compromised. His crew is dead or dying, and the major still cannot see what killed them. No muzzle flash. No sound of approach. Just impacts arriving from nowhere, supersonic and invisible. The thought arrives with the clarity of shock. They're already dead. Whatever is shooting knows exactly where each man crouches in the darkness. The shot that killed them was fired before they heard the sound. Lieutenant Colonel David's jaw tightens in the CENTCOM Operations Center. Riyadh, 0512 hours. The morning brief displays reconnaissance images transmitted from an F-15E that diverted to western Iraq after detecting secondary explosions. His intelligence officer clicks through frames showing 4 destroyed SCUD launchers, fuel trucks reduced to carbon scoring on sand, bodies scattered in patterns suggesting they died running. David counts the craters. 0. No bomb damage assessment markers, no ordnance fragmentation. The launchers weren't destroyed. They were murdered. "Show me the strike package," David orders. His targeting officer pulls up the air tasking order. Empty. No coalition aircraft scheduled within 80 kilometers of that grid square during the engagement window. The F-15E pilot who photographed the carnage reported the fires were already dying when he arrived, estimating the attack occurred 30 to 40 minutes prior. David's fingers drum the briefing table. Mathematics that don't resolve create the worst kind of operational fog. Could be Apache helicopters, the intelligence officer suggests. Low-altitude ingress? David shakes his head. Apaches use Hellfire missiles. This is small arms damage. He zooms the thermal image. The fuel truck's puncture wounds glow white against cooler metal. Entry holes the diameter of his thumb. Exit craters the size of dinner plates. Through and through penetration suggesting kinetic energy that didn't stop for anything mechanical. The hydraulic manifold on Launcher 2 shows identical trauma. A single hole that destroyed the entire pressurization system. His operations officer leans closer to the screen. Sir, that's precision marksmanship. Look at the impact spacing. He traces a pattern with his finger. Fuel technician, driver, hydraulic system, tire. Each shot targeted critical personnel or mechanical vulnerabilities. No wasted rounds, no suppressive fire. Just surgical destruction delivered at intervals suggesting a shooter who selected targets methodically, without panic. David pulls ballistic data from the archive. Standard 7.62mm tornado can't penetrate SCUD launcher armor at range. Neither can 5.56mm. His mind catalogs the inventory of weapons capable of this damage pattern. The entry wounds suggest .50 caliber, but who fires crew-served weapons with sniper precision? Machine gunners hose targets. These impacts cluster within centimeters of each other. Get me the distance calculation, David says. The intelligence officer triangulates launcher positions against terrain elevation, wind conditions logged by weather reconnaissance, and the projectile angles visible in the wreckage analysis. His calculator beeps. He blinks at the result, checks it again. Sir, based on the trajectory and impact depth, minimum 1,800 meters. Could be further. David's coffee goes cold in his hand. 1,800 meters. Over a mile. In darkness. Against mobile targets that weren't supposed to be there. The Iraqi crews never saw it coming because nothing should exist that can kill from that distance with that precision. He thinks about the coalition's Special Operations Task Order, the classified teams inserted into Western Iraq for SCUD interdiction. Delta Force, British SAS. Units trained to observe and report, to guide airstrikes onto targets they paint with lasers. Not units trained to engage ballistic missiles with small arms. Find me who's operating in that sector, David orders. And find me what weapon system puts 50 caliber rounds through hydraulic manifolds at 2,000 meters. His operations officer reaches for the secure phone, but David knows the answer will be buried under classification stamps and need-to-know restrictions. Someone out there is rewriting the tactical manual in real time. Someone was killing ballistic missiles with sniper rifles. The after-action report arrives via satellite burst transmission, encrypted 3 layers deep. David decrypts it personally in the SCUD cell, a windowless room where 15 analysts track Iraqi mobile launchers across western desert. The document header reads, Operational Detachment Delta, followed by a classification marking he's only seen twice in his career. He scans the first paragraph, then reads it again, slower, because the physics seem wrong. 2 men, observation post, Juliet, established 72 hours prior to engagement. The report's prose is clinical, stripped of emotion. Team inserted via MH53 at 2134 hours. Established hide site grid NKO 847293. Observed Iraqi convoy approach at 0247 hours. Engagement initiated at 0251 hours. Range 832 meters. Conditions. Wind 8 knots northeast. Temperature 4 degrees Celsius. No moon. David flips to the weapons manifest. Barrett M82A1 .50 caliber rifle. Macmillan TAC-50. Not crew-served machine guns, but precision instruments weighing 30 pounds each, firing rounds that weigh 2 ounces and travel at 2,800 feet per second. The shooters weren't hosing targets. They were operating bolt-action rifles as strategic weapons. The intelligence analyst standing beside David points to an attached photograph. 2 men buried in a hide site. Camouflage netting woven with local vegetation. Rifles extending from apertures barely wider than the barrels. 1 shooter, 1 spotter. The spotter's face is pixelated, but David can see the laser rangefinder, the Kestrel weather meter clipped to his vest, the notebook where he calculates ballistic solutions in real time. These aren't soldiers positioned behind machine guns. They're mathematicians solving equations measured in wind drift and Coriolis effect. How long were they in position? David asks. 72 hours before engagement. No movement, no heat signature. Drinking through tubes, defecating in bags. David's mind struggles with the operational stamina. 3 days motionless in sand, waiting for targets that might never arrive, then executing precision fire at distances where the bullet flight time exceeds 3 seconds. The Iraqis died before sound traveled from muzzle to target. The spotter's notes, reproduced in the report, show corrections for each shot. Target 1, Fuel Tech, 1832 meh, wind plus 0.4 mil, result, center mass. Target 2, Driver 1847 wind plus 0.3 mil, result, headshot. Headshot at 1,847 meters. David has fired expert on rifle ranges where 300 meters qualifies as long distance. These operators are engaging individual humans at 6 times that range, in darkness, against targets who don't know they're being hunted. The operations analyst pulls up supplementary imagery, thermal scans of the hide site taken by Pavlo helicopters during extraction. The site is invisible until you know exactly where to look. Even then, it registers as geological anomaly, a slight temperature differential that could be rock-absorbing daytime heat. The analysts buried themselves so completely, the desert absorbed them. They're calling it strategic interdiction sniping, the analyst says. New doctrine. Can't track mobile launchers with satellites fast enough. Can't keep aircraft overhead continuously. So you put shooters in the dirt and let them kill the crews. David closes the report. 26 SCUD launches prevented, according to Delta's cumulative assessment across all operational detachments in western Iraq. 26 ballistic missiles that never reached Israel, never forced Israeli retaliation, never shattered the coalition holding Arab and Western forces together. The strategic calculus is staggering. 2 men with rifles achieving what bomber wings couldn't guarantee. They were shooting crew-served weapons like precision rifles. The Barrett M82A1 is not subtle. 57 inches long, 30 pounds loaded, and firing the 50 Browning machine gun cartridge, a round designed in 1918 to penetrate tank armor. The bullet weighs 661 grains, over 2 ounces of copper-jacketed lead and steel core. When the firing pin strikes the primer, 15,000 pounds of chamber pressure accelerate the projectile down a 29-inch barrel. Muzzle velocity, 2,099 feet per second. Muzzle energy, 1,344 foot-pounds, roughly equivalent to a pickup truck hitting a wall at 60 miles per hour. But energy alone doesn't explain the kills. Physics does. The 50 BMG remains supersonic past 2,000 meters. Most rifle rounds go transonic, slowing below the speed of sound, and tumble unpredictably as they shed velocity. The Barrett's payload stays stabilized, spinning at 200,000 rotations per minute from the barrel's rifling, carving through atmosphere with enough kinetic force to punch through engine blocks. At 1,800 meters, the bullet still carries 5,000 foot-pounds of energy, more than enough to destroy hydraulic systems engineered to withstand 3,000 psi of internal pressure. The Delta shooters weren't aiming for center mass on armored targets. They were targeting vulnerabilities mapped during reconnaissance. The fuel technician connecting oxidizer lines, exposed and motionless for 8 seconds. The driver behind windshield glass rated to stop 7.62mm rounds but never tested against projectiles moving faster than commercial airliners. The hydraulic manifolds and tire sidewalls and fuel tank seams where metal thickness measured millimeters instead of centimeters. Ballistic computers don't work at these distances. The shooters use mil-dot reticles, mental math, and experience. Wind drift at 1,800 meters can push the bullet 3 feet horizontally. Earth's rotation, the Coriolis effect, deflects rounds eastward in the northern hemisphere, imperceptible at close range but critical beyond a mile. Temperature affects powder burn rates. Barometric pressure changes air density. The spotter measures everything: wind speed at hide site level and estimated wind aloft, temperature, humidity, even the rotation of the planet beneath the bullet's flight path. The bullet leaves the muzzle. 3 seconds of flight time. The sound of the shot travels at 1,325 feet per second, arriving at the target nearly 3 seconds after the bullet impacts. The Iraqi fuel technician dies before his brain processes the threat. His neurons fire electrical signals at 268 miles per hour, fast for biology, glacial compared to supersonic copper. The bullet destroys his skull. The pressure wave continues through his brain tissue, and his body begins falling before the muzzle blast reaches his ears. The Barrett's recoil, brutal, legendary, pushes 90 foot-pounds into the shooter's shoulder, equivalent to being punched by a professional heavyweight boxer. The rifle's muzzle brake redirects propellant gases to mitigate the violence, but shooters still absorb punishment. After 20 rounds, shoulders bruise purple. After 50, nerve damage becomes concern. The Delta operators in hide sites fire selectively, each round a calculated investment of physical suffering and tactical revelation. Muzzle flash, even suppressed, creates signature. Tracer rounds would announce position like signal flares, so they shoot standard ball ammunition, adjust for impact, and trust mathematics. The fuel truck explodes not from the bullet itself, but from what the bullet releases. Pressurized oxidizers spraying across hot metal, friction igniting chemical reactions. The 50 BMG doesn't need incendiary rounds. Kinetic energy alone creates conditions for catastrophe. The Iraqis never stood a chance. The weapon defied their understanding of engagement ranges. Infantry fights at 300 meters, artillery at 30 kilometers. But 2 miles? That distance belonged to aircraft and missiles, not men with rifles. The bullet arrived 3 seconds before the sound. General Norman Schwarzkopf receives the Delta Force briefing in his Riyadh Command Center, February 2, 1991. The presenter, a colonel whose name tape is blacked out for operational security, displays a map of western Iraq marked with 26 red crosses. Each cross represents a destroyed Scud launcher. Each destruction occurred beyond visual range of coalition aircraft. Each involved 2-man teams lying motionless in sand for days, then engaging mobile targets at distances that make conventional infantry doctrine obsolete. Schwarzkopf leans back, arms crossed. "You're telling me we've been hunting Scuds with snipers?" "Yes, sir. Strategic interdiction. We can't keep satellites overhead continuously. Can't maintain combat air patrol across 8,000 square kilometers of desert. But we can insert small teams, pre-position them along known launch corridors, and let them kill the crews." The mathematics reshape counter-proliferation strategy in real time. One F-15E Strike Eagle costs $50 million, requires refueling support, carries limited ordnance, and must return to base. 2 Delta operators cost nothing beyond insertion, carry 60 rounds between them, and remain operational for 72 hours minimum. The exchange rate favors flesh and patience over titanium and jet fuel. The colonel displays engagement photos, fuel trucks punctured, hydraulic systems destroyed, crews dead beside missiles that never launched. Schwarzkopf studies the imagery. "What's the political dimension?" The intelligence officer steps forward. "Sir, Israeli cabinet was preparing retaliatory strikes. Shamir's government couldn't sustain domestic pressure if Scud attacks continued. The moment Israel engages, our Arab coalition partners withdraw. Syria, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, they won't fight alongside the IDF against Iraq." The strategic collapse scenario runs through Schwarzkopf's mind like falling dominoes. Israel strikes Iraq. Coalition fractures. International support evaporates. Desert Storm becomes an American-Israeli operation condemned by the United Nations, possibly fracturing NATO support. The entire geopolitical framework depends on keeping Israel out of the war, which means stopping every Scud before it forces their hand. "How many launches have we prevented?" 26 confirmed, sir. Possibly more. We're finding destroyed launchers in areas where teams operated but didn't file after-action reports due to immediate extraction. 26 missiles that never flew. 26 opportunities for Israeli retaliation eliminated by men lying in dirt with rifles. Schwarzkopf calculates the operational impact, not in sorties or ordnance tonnage, but in political stability maintained, alliance cohesion preserved, and worst-case scenarios prevented. Traditional military assessment measures success in enemy assets destroyed. This new calculus measures success in catastrophes avoided. The colonel continues, "We're integrating the doctrine now, sir. Forward observers identify launch sites. Delta teams insert 72 hours ahead of predicted activity, establish hide positions along approach routes. When Iraqi crews arrive, shooters engage critical personnel and equipment. Surviving vehicles become static targets for F-15E follow-up strikes. The hunter-killer model inverts conventional force employment. Aircraft don't hunt mobile launchers anymore. They exploit opportunities created by snipers who turn mobile threats into immobile wreckage. The targeting cycle compresses from hours to minutes. Iraqi crews believe they're safe in 90-minute satellite gaps. But the gaps contain predators they never imagined. Schwarzkopf signs the operational order expanding Delta SCUD hunting mandate. More teams, more sectors, more hide sites woven into terrain where Iraqi launchers believe themselves invisible. The memo includes a classification stamp that will keep this tactical innovation buried for decades, not because it failed, but because it succeeded beyond doctrinal comprehension. Military historians will study this decision for 30 years, analyzing how individual marksmen achieve strategic effects previously reserved for bomber wings and ballistic missile defense systems. Delta had invented a new category of warfare. The F-15E pilot watches his land-tyrant targeting pod track the burning MA-543 below, 15,000 feet over western Iraq. His weapons systems officer marks the coordinates, but the GBU-12 laser-guided bomb hanging under their wing stays locked. No point in wasting ordnance on wreckage. Whoever hit this convoy already delivered a death sentence. The pilot's job is just confirming the body count. Jesus, the WSO mutters through the intercom. How long has this been burning? Thermal bloom suggests 20 minutes, maybe 30. The pilot banks the Strike Eagle, infrared sensors painting the scene below in shades of white heat. 4 SCUD launchers arranged in textbook firing formation. 3 fuel trucks reduced to carbon residue. Bodies scattered in patterns suggesting panic flight rather than organized withdrawal. No bomb craters, no artillery impact signatures, just small caliber penetrations and the catastrophic secondary effects those penetrations triggered. The realization arrives slowly. 2 men with rifles just did what his entire squadron couldn't guarantee. The pilot has flown 16 SCUD hunting missions, each one a frustrating calculus of fuel range versus search time versus target mobility. Launchers appear on infrared, disappear before weapons release. Crews master the 90-minute satellite gaps, emerging from hardened shelters, firing and vanishing before strike packages arrive. The Iraqis turn counter-SCUD operations into expensive aerial surveillance missions that rarely culminate in kills. But this is different mathematics entirely. The WSO pulls up mission data. No friendlies scheduled in this sector. No artillery fire missions. No close air support. Just ghosts. The pilot knows what ghosts means in special operations parlance. Delta Force teams operating under operational security so tight, even strike pilots don't get briefed on their locations. The thought unsettles him. Men buried in sand below his flight path, invisible to infrared, waiting days for targets he hunts from 15,000 feet. The force multiplication staggers his tactical understanding. His Strike Eagle represents $70 million of technology, requires 5 support aircraft for a single mission, and carries 4 precision bombs. The shooters below invested nothing but patience and ballistic skill, yet achieved effects he can't replicate with guided munitions. The radio crackles. Viper 2-3, you are cleared to RTB. Target assessment complete. Copy. The pilot advances throttles, the twin Pratt and Whitney engines pushing the Strike Eagle toward 30,000 feet. Below, the burning launchers recede into thermal anonymity, just another set of coordinates in the nightly target brief. But the pilot keeps thinking about the exchange rate. 2 men versus 4 launchers. No fuel burn. No weapons expenditure. No tanker support or AWACS coordination. Just insertion, patience, and marksmanship that turns mobile strategic threats into static wreckage for aircraft to photograph. His weapons school instructors never covered this scenario. What happens when special operations forces achieve effects traditionally reserved for air power? The doctrinal boundaries blur. Forward air controllers guide strikes. Snipers observe and report. But these operators aren't calling in ordnance. They are the ordnance. Precision strike capability reduced to human scale, delivered by men who measure wind drift in milliradians and calculate Coriolis effect with pencil and notebook. The Strike Eagle crosses into friendly airspace. The pilot files his mission report noting destroyed launchers and absence of coalition ordnance. His squadron intelligence officer will correlate the data, connect patterns, and eventually brief the wing commander on the new tactical reality emerging in western Iraq. The hunter-killer teams were force multipliers measured in Mach numbers, invisible snipers creating opportunities for aircraft traveling at the speed of sound, collapsing the targeting cycle from hours to minutes, turning Iraq's mobile SCUD threat into a shooting gallery where every firing position became a kill zone. The hunter-killer teams were force multipliers measured in Mach numbers. The secure cable arrives at Mossad headquarters in Tel Aviv, February 8, 1991, decoded by analysts who've spent 3 weeks tracking SCUD impacts across Israeli population centers. 42 missiles launched at Israel since the war began. 18 landed in Tel Aviv. 7 in Haifa. The rest scattered across the coastal plain where 70% of Israel's population clusters within 30 kilometers of the Mediterranean. Each impact fractures Israeli restraint a little further. Each air raid siren pushes public opinion closer to demanding military response. But the cable changes the mathematics. It arrives from CENTCOM via CIA liaison channels, marked with classification stamps that require Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir's personal authorization to decrypt. The content is surgical. American Special Operations Forces have eliminated 26 SCUD launchers in western Iraq using direct action tactics. Not airstrikes, not Patriot missile intercepts, ground interdiction by small teams engaging mobile launchers before they fire. Shamir reads the cable twice. His cabinet has been preparing strike packages, F-15Is loaded with penetrator bombs, target folders for Iraqi airfields and suspected SCUD storage facilities. The political pressure is molecular. Israeli citizens sheltering in sealed rooms, gas masks beside their beds, sirens wailing at 0300 hours. The public demands response. His military commanders promise precision strikes. His coalition partners, Washington primarily, beg for restraint. And now this. Americans lying in sand, shooting SCUD crews with rifles at distances that sound fictional. Defense Minister Moshe Ahrens leans across the briefing table. How reliable is this intelligence? CENTCOM wouldn't transmit it unless verified. Shamir taps the cable. 26 launchers. The launch tempo against us has dropped 40% in the last week. We attributed it to increased air patrols. Apparently, we were wrong. The strategic calculation rewrites itself. Israeli retaliation risks fracturing the coalition. Arab states won't fight alongside the IDF against Iraq, no matter how justified the strikes. American political capital depends on keeping Israel out of the war. But restraint requires something most Israelis haven't seen: proof that someone else is protecting them. The Patriot missiles intercept some SCUDs, miss others. Air patrols destroy launchers after they fire. Neither solution prevents launches. Delta Force prevents launches. 26 times. Ahrens studies the attached operational summary. They're calling it strategic interdiction sniping. Two-man teams, 72-hour deployments, engagement ranges beyond 800 meters. It's... He trails off, searching for the word. Unprecedented. Shamir considers the domestic politics. He can't publicize this. Operational security forbids it. And Israeli citizens wouldn't accept that American snipers provide better protection than their own defense forces. But the cabinet needs to know. The Knesset needs to understand. Most critically, the military planners preparing retaliatory strikes need to see the data. SCUD launches are declining not from increased air pressure, but from ground interdiction eliminating crews before they reach firing positions. How many missiles has Patriot actually stopped? Shamir asks. His intelligence chief checks the file. 14 confirmed intercepts, another 8 possible. And how many SCUDs have these American teams stopped from launching at all? 26 confirmed, possibly more. We're extrapolating from declining launch rates and destroyed launchers found in western Iraq. The mathematics crystallize. Patriot intercepts missiles already in flight, sometimes successfully. Delta Force prevents launches entirely, always successfully, when teams are in position. The real Iron Dome isn't the missile batteries ringing Tel Aviv. It's two-man teams buried in Iraqi sand, calculating wind drift and Coriolis effect, delivering 50 caliber rounds into fuel trucks before crews finish their cigarettes. Shamir postpones the retaliatory strike authorization. Not cancels, postpones. But everyone in the room understands the subtext. The real Iron Dome was two men lying in sand. The Army Marksmanship Unit at Fort Benning receives a classified briefing in 1993, 2 years after Desert Storm. The instructor, a Delta Force operator whose face remains off camera during the presentation, displays ballistic data and after-action photos from Operation Desert Storm. The students are Special Forces snipers, SEAL Team marksmen, and Marine Scout snipers, the best precision shooters in the American military. They've come to learn what happened in western Iraq, why the doctrine manuals are being rewritten, and how individual riflemen achieve strategic effects previously reserved for bomber wings. The operator's laser pointer traces the engagement geometry on the projection screen. Target sets we couldn't service through conventional air interdiction. Mobile launchers, unpredictable launch windows, terrain that favored concealment. The Iraqis understood our satellite gaps and aircraft patrol patterns. They owned the operational tempo. Until they didn't. The operator clicks to thermal imagery showing destroyed MAZ-543 transporters, fuel trucks punctured with surgical precision, crews dead beside missiles that never fired. Engagement range, 132 meters average, 2,092 meters maximum. Equipment, Barrett M82A1, Macmillan TAC-50. Duration in hide sight, 72 hours minimum, 96 hours maximum. Result, 26 mobile launchers destroyed, 0 coalition aircraft losses, 0 collateral damage. A Marine instructor raises his hand. Sir, we teach 800 meters as maximum effective range for 50 caliber precision fire. How did... We rewrote the manual, the operator interrupts. The 50 BMG remains supersonic past 2,000 meters if you account for atmospheric conditions. The bullet doesn't care about doctrine. Physics doesn't care about training limitations. We proved you can engage crew-served targets at ranges previously considered impossible. The students scribble notes. The implications cascade through tactical planning. If individual shooters can kill strategic assets at 2 miles, then special operations doctrine needs revision. Forward observers become precision strikers. Reconnaissance becomes interdiction. The traditional division between observation and direct action collapses into a new category, strategic interdiction sniping, where individual marksmen achieve effects measured in prevented catastrophes rather than enemy casualties. The operator displays a slide showing integrated operations. The hide sites fed targeting data to F-15E Strike Eagles. We'd destroy the launcher's mobility, kill the crews, puncture fuel trucks, disable hydraulics, then mark coordinates for follow-up airstrikes. Compression of the kill chain from hours to minutes. The Iraqis couldn't adapt because they never saw the threat coming. Someone asks about Israeli restraint. The operator's answer is careful, politically sanitized. Coalition cohesion was the strategic center of gravity. If Israel retaliates, Arab partners withdraw. International support fractures. Every SCUD launch risked that outcome. We prevented 26 launches. Draw your own conclusions about strategic impact. The briefing concludes with a tombstone statement, the kind that appears in field manuals and staff college curriculum. Operation Desert Storm demonstrated that properly trained and equipped precision marksmen can achieve operational-level effects through strategic interdiction of high-value targets. The 1991 SCUD hunt missions established the template for modern man-portable strategic strike capabilities. The students file out, minds reeling with implications. Snipers aren't just force protection assets anymore. They're strategic weapons. The distance between trigger and target can span 2 miles. The gap between individual action and national security outcomes can collapse to single shots, properly placed. Somewhere in western Iraq, beneath sand that's absorbed their heat signature and sweat and patience, are hide sites marked only by GPS coordinates. Empty now, abandoned. But the ground remembers what happened there. The quiet math of ballistic physics, the brutal patience of men who waited days for targets measured in seconds, and the strategic revolution delivered one impossible shot at a time. 26 launches stopped. 26 catastrophes prevented, 2 miles at a time.